One thing I have to say is, Stephanie, listening to you speak, there's so much joy when you speak about all this. I think it's like you're really passionate about this topic.
Because I've always enjoyed strategy and like operations and process. How do you take all those moving parts and how they can come together and really make a big impact?
The fact that you talked about, how the tech map keeps growing is so true. I mean, on the last episode, person I spoke to, he was talking about how I think at one point they had like 32 different software tools at their
oh my gosh
at their firm. And I was thinking, and we were joking about it, that you might even forget that you have a few of those, right? Because you're not going to use all of them. You keep talking about a lean tech stack. I think your business tagline is also something along those lines, right? Systematizing CRMs to power lean tech stacks.
My ears perk up whenever I hear certain things. It's a glorified Rolodex, or hey, I use a bunch of sticky notes. Here's a couple examples, or there's a lot of incomplete tasks or workflows that are in their system. But then also, we have this software, but we don't use it. So it just kind of sits here on the shelf. I know we can use it better, but I'm not sure how. They're just not utilizing the system to its fullest.
You typically want to try and understand what the state of affairs are, right? When you start the diagnostic.
Right.
What is that all about?
I kind of assimilate it to going to the doctor for all these years, working with dozens and dozens of different advisory firms. I've never met one that is the same. Like, everyone is different. There's these big parts of the journey that are always the same: prospecting, onboarding, client review, and ongoing service. But really, at the end of the day, everyone has something unique about them. And so it's super important for me as a consultant to be able to come in and take those unique aspects of your business and actually build them into the CRM. And to me, that's what really is that's like the secret sauce, if you will.
You worked with CRMs for so long, right? If you had a wish list in terms of the CRM of the future with, technology, automation, AI, is there a view on what you think, you would like it to look like?
Back when I first started, I was in the room with a lot of advisors taking physical notes and then having to type them in and stuff. So the fact that the AI can hear it and synthesize it, it's tough to beat that. And so I think that more and more administrative type of things are going to be taken over by AI.
Maybe final kind of CRM question. But in sticking to the theme of 5, if there were 5 must-dos that someone who has a CRM must do, what would they be? Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Welcome to Advisor Ally. And it's great to see you again. I know we met just last month in California. How are things back there?
They're great. Yeah. No, it's starting to cool down, and we're getting ready for the fall. So yeah, all is good here. Right. And yeah, it was really nice meeting you in person. You had a world tour essentially going through California and different parts of the U.S. for all of your different business travels. So appreciate you taking the time to meet with me and to just go over what you guys are doing over there, and then for me to introduce myself. And so super excited to chat with you today.
No, it was excellent. And I think, always lovely to spend time in California. And thank you so much for, giving us some time today. We're excited. I think a lot of interesting questions that I've lined up for you. Nothing too complicated, I can promise. But perhaps we get started, Stephanie, if that's okay. Listen, I think firstly, it's always good to understand a little bit about the journey and the background, right? And you've, I think, spent close to a decade in financial services. Now, if I understand correctly, started in client service, then you became a financial advisor, then an insurance agent as well. Would love to hear a little bit about, the journey, what you learned during that time, and what led you to, starting your own consulting firm and focused on CRM consulting.
Yeah.
Bang in the middle of COVID, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes. In the middle of COVID, it was when I made the transition. Yeah. So, I've always had a passion for helping others and finding ways to really make work better. So I was an athlete growing up, played sports in college, which really taught me the value of structure, teamwork, and really discipline. And that really shapes who I am today. I earned my Bachelor of Science in California, as well as my MBA and my Master's in Public Policy And I feel like the reason why I kind of had that progression was because I've always enjoyed strategy and like operations and process, and really just trying to figure out, how do you take all those moving parts, and how they can come together and really make a big impact. So during grad school, when I was getting my MBA, a family friend actually introduced me to financial services, and it really seemed to me like a culmination of everything that I enjoy, and everything that I really want to do going forward. So then, fast forward, spent the last decade or so in the industry, started out in admin and client services and operations, and then worked my way up to more of an advisory type of role. So, got into lots of financial plans and investment management. So worn literally every hat that's possible in the business. So then in 2020, 2021, made the pivot. It wasn't because of COVID, but I had my first child. So that gave me a little bit more perspective. And I just wanted to be able to, structure, how I wanted to go forward. And I think, I just had the opportunity to be able to take a step back and figure out what did I really enjoy about my career at that point, and what did I want to continue doing. And again, kind of came back to that whole idea of process and how do I help people optimize? And I was always the go-to person with technology. So whenever someone had an issue with Tamarack, or if they had an issue with MoneyGuide Pro, or, with a custodian, I was always the one stepping in and trying to figure out, okay, how do we optimize this, or how do we fix this? So I thought, okay, well, the firms I was working with at the time really could use my help. I'm sure there's lots of other ones. So just, so over the last couple of years, trying to figure out how can we, get that lean tech stack, as many in the industry keep on trying to harp on. But I feel like at the core of it is really the CRM. And so that's where I spend a majority of my time now, fast forward to today, really spending a lot of time in the CRM, and then just trying to have that be the center of the whole ecosystem of the tech. But when I work with my clients, I like to try and be as lean as possible, just because there's so many, when you look at the tech map, it's just a little overwhelming. There's just so many options. So I feel like it's kind of debilitating by choice. So I think, what's key is trying to figure out what things do you need most, and then how can you make sure you're leveraging each of those softwares to their fullest. And so that's where I really come in, is I really bridge the gap between, strategy, and, vision for the team to be able to actually implement into the system, and really leverage the CRM to its fullest. So that way you can actually take advantage of your software and others. So that way, the team is just, as efficient as possible.
Understood. No, I think it's often the thing that they say about consulting is that, you've got people who haven't really done it kind of telling you what to do. But in your case, you've actually been there, done that. And that's very interesting, right? Because you've seen how it actually happens on the ground. And now you've taken a step back and you're kind of looking at it from a big picture standpoint. So, it makes total sense for someone to work with you. And the fact that you talked about, how the tech map keeps growing is so true. I mean, on the last episode, the person I spoke to, he was talking about how I think at one point they had like 32 different software tools at their
oh my gosh
at their firm. And I was thinking, and we were joking about it, that you might even forget that you have a few of those, right? Because you're not going to use all of them every day or even every week for that matter. But that's a great segue. And I love that you keep talking about a lean tech stack. And actually that's something I think your business tagline is also something along those lines, right? Systematizing CRMs to power lean tech stacks. So clearly that is something that you're kind of extremely focused on. And I like the idea that, CRM can be a center of that tech universe, but maybe, it'd be good to just kind of break that down a little bit. So, obviously everyone's got a CRM, be that any CRM in the market, right? But when you speak to RIAs, or in your experience, what are some of the telltale signs that people aren't really utilizing it to the full extent?
Yeah, so it's definitely a couple. Once when I'm doing my initial consults with people, I kind of have my ears perk up whenever I hear certain things. A couple of them was, oh, it's a glorified Rolodex, or hey, I use a bunch of sticky notes. Here's a couple examples, or there's a lot of incomplete tasks or workflows that are in their system. Again, irrelevant to which CRM they're using. But then also, we have this software, but we don't use it, or it's not really capturing the information we need. So it just kind of sits here on the shelf. I know we can use it better, but I'm not sure how. So those are a couple different of those different kind of questions and statements that I hear that kind of perk up, saying, okay, like they're just not utilizing the system to its fullest. And that's really, to me, where it comes down to is it's not really a lack of trying or understanding of the system. It's just that the system itself, they're not, it's just the processes. So, something that we can talk about too is just kind of how do I pitch it as far as how do you actually leverage it? Because again, a lot of people say, well, essentially convince me why I should be using a CRM. Like what benefit does it really have? Because a lot of people also come to me saying, well, I'm inputting all this information. Like that just seems like a lot of work than just calling up my client, just having the conversation. Like now I got to log it and then I got to do all these other things for it. But in the industry that we are, you have to document everything. So again, that's something where we kind of just discuss the pros and cons of using one. And I try and I do help out with Redtail and Wealthbox specifically, but, a lot of people come to me asking questions about Salesforce or any others. And so I offer advice just on a high level. But those are the two I specifically work with. But yeah, so those are a couple of different questions or statements that I hear. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think, that's where you kind of start, right? Using it like a digital Rolodex, but if you kind of stick to just that, clearly you're kind of underutilizing it in a big way. And we can get into a lot more detail about that. And actually, I think when we spoke, Stephanie, especially the Redtail and Wealthbox side, you mentioned you typically want to try and understand what the state of affairs are, right? And you start with the diagnostic.
Right.
What is that all about? So what is it that you're looking for in terms of usage? If you could share a little bit more.
Yeah, because really the goal is to take those questions and those statements of, oh, it's just kind of just sitting on the shelf, or it's not being utilized, or I just don't understand the true value of it. And so by having those conversations and this diagnostic, like that's the end goal, right? So like to show that by having everything systematized, then you have a lot of savings in time and money and all these different things. But yeah, so usually what I do first is I kind of assimilate it to going to the doctor. So for me to understand kind of where everyone's at, because I think that was a big shift, is that when I was an employee, I was able to, have one example of one system and one process, right? But now after all these years working with dozens and dozens of different advisory firms, I've never met one that is the same. Like everyone is different. And so that's why it's so critical. There's these big parts of the journey that are always the same: prospecting, onboarding, client review, and ongoing service. But really at the end of the day, everyone has something unique about them. And so it's super important for me as a consultant to be able to come in and take those unique aspects of your business and actually build them into the CRM. And to me, that's what really is that's like the secret sauce, if you will, and we're able to really leverage the system and make it feel like it's more you versus just having to go into a box. So with the diagnostic, again, similar to going to the doctor, I have my own dashboards. It's not part of the CRM, it's external. And then I have a report. And so for that, I call it my snapshot, because that's what it is. I go into the system, I look at all parts of it. I look at your contacts, look at duplicates, I look at client information. Are we missing information? Are we segmenting our clients if our book is big enough? Then I look at workflows and task templates and activities if you're in Redtail. So really looking at all different templates and different parts of the system. So are you actually leveraging the templates within the system, or are you just doing more ad hoc information that is being inputted into the system? Are you not leveraging a part of the software? I mean, a lot of times the opportunity section, for example, in both Redtail and Wealthbox, are usually underutilized. So how do we, what is that? Why are you not using that? Are you using a separate sales software? And then from there, really trying to figure out kind of like, okay, then I branch into like the ecosystem. Like then I look and see, okay, where are we connected and what other softwares are we leveraging to be able to actually enhance this information. So really from there, I give them a couple quick wins, and then I customize proposals after that. So depending on what they need, if I see that there's a lot of data cleanup that needs to occur, then, I make recommendations on how we can clean those up, clean up duplicates, be able to, formatting issues. A lot of times I get in there and there's all caps or there's, punctuations in different areas. So trying to figure out how do we clean up that data, and then looking at, Redtail calls it the database list, and Wealthbox, it's the workspace customization section. And really, how do we make sure that that menu is really clean? So tags, custom fields, in Redtail, status and categories. Like, how do we make sure that that list, abides by how you actually run your business, and it doesn't have a lot of things that are maybe needing to be archived or things that just are no longer relevant. Because a lot of times things just get built out into the system and then they kind of sit there. And then, especially if there's a change of the guard of who, is in charge of operations, maybe one part of the team was doing something. And so it's just trying to make sure everyone's on the same page, and just trying to figure out, okay, from here, where do we go? And then once we figure out that diagnostic, and once we figure out, okay, we need to do some cleanup, or, looks like we don't really have any workflows built out, for example, that's where we discuss, okay, what makes the most sense? And then from there, for those templates, the first step is just making sure we have some sort of process in place internally, maybe a Word document, like an SOP, standard operating procedure, or an Excel, or some form of documentation of that process. Because again, everyone does it differently. So I myself have my own catalog of different templates that people can have as like a baseline. Me personally, like, I love editing. Like I whenever I do my blogs or anything, I love to have like a start to have something to be able to edit from. That's where I feel like I really enjoy. So I feel like with a lot of advisors I work with, they're like, I just need something to start. So I kind of give them a baseline of, all right, from all the firms I've worked at, here is like your typical prospecting, onboarding, client review workflows. And then from there, they say, oh yeah, well, during our prospecting process, we do this extra step, or during our onboarding, we also send out an email to so-and-so, or, we make that connection. So then it's that customization part. And that's where I really enjoy it, is how do we make sure that it aligns exactly with the process that you have outlined for your firm. And then that just leads into, okay, now that we have this all documented, now we're going to be able to have everyone on the same page. There's no questions as far as what needs to occur. And so then I build out. So not only do I provide strategy on that. So again, to your point, since I've worn so many hats, when someone asks me, can you tell me about like a trading workflow? Then I'm able to say, okay, well, depending on which, platform you're doing with, like if it's Wealthscape, it's this. I have a lot of LPL advisors. So, okay, how do we make sure we're leveraging ClientWorks in here? So again, just trying to figure out how do we translate those processes into the system in a way that makes the most sense. And then I provide the strategy, but then I also build out into the system too. So I think that's a difference between myself and a lot of other consultants, is I roll up my sleeves and I actually get into the system and build out their stuff and then train them. So that's kind of the final part of it, is really making sure that, we build out, and I just don't feel comfortable handing over the keys and say drive. Like, I want to make sure we do some test runs. So that's where we do a lot of training, make sure people are on the same page. I really like to phrase it and position it where it's role based. So I do some training with just the support team and just the advisors, because their purpose of using the CRM is totally different. And so I want to make sure that each person in the team understands, like, no, like, you're supposed to be in the weeds, you're supposed to be doing these workflow steps. But as an advisor, you're really wanting to lean on your support team. So you really want to be on the dashboards and, kind of its overarching workflow and task dashboard. I used to call them dashboards before Wealthbox came in with them, but essentially the views that you're looking at to see what's happening with the system and with the client base overall. And to me, where like that, the turning point is when you can actually have those key observations and results from all of that data. So once you have all that data in there, then you're able to really be able to leverage that information to see where are the bottlenecks. Like, if you're really leveraging the opportunity section, you can figure out in the workflows, you can figure out, okay, well, why is it that this one step keeps taking 2 weeks? Like, why is this? So then you can kind of start looking at your business as a whole and say, okay, this is why it's taking so long. And then you're able to figure out, okay, well, if this is the issue, here's the solution, and then be able to leverage it. But the data is key. And I mean, it's the same with your software. I mean, data is king. And so that's why you have to make sure that you're really leveraging the software. And I feel like, it is a lot of work to put the data in there, but at the same time, it's totally worth it at the end of the day to have those key insights.
Right. One thing I have to say is, Stephanie, listening to you speak, there's so much joy when you speak about all this. I think it's like you're really passionate about this topic. It really comes through. But just coming back to the point you were making there, and it's interesting, right? Because obviously we spoke about the digital Rolodex and how, at a base level, a CRM does a few things, which every CRM does. But the great thing about some of the industry-focused CRMs is that you can actually help utilize them to streamline some of your core workflows like onboarding, prospecting, as you mentioned. But a very interesting point that you mentioned there is also you can also then assess how well those workflows are working once once everyone starts following. I think that's a very important point, because you can not just streamline, but you can iterate and make them better as well. And so CRM kind of plays both roles in some ways, if you are effectively using it, if everyone's effectively using it.
Yep.
And I think, and I would say, my assumption, I guess this would be my assumption. I think obviously, when there's not enough good data or people are not effectively utilizing the CRM, obviously there's a case of people not using it enough, or people not knowing what and where to use in the CRM. But also, I think one thing I noticed from what you said is it could also be because people are using it differently. There's no standard process, and hence the data is all over the place. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So that's where really having, standard operating procedures in place, whether it is external and Word, that's one thing that I always like to recommend is, I try and build the workflows to be more evergreen. So I personally, everyone has you can talk to any consultant, everyone will have a different opinion. But for me, what I found is that if I can have them be as evergreen as possible, then that will really help with adoption. So for example, when I build out workflows, I like to have it be as lean as possible, 8 or 9 steps, maybe a couple sub steps in there if needed. But then what I do within it, so one cool, trick that I like to do within the CRM is then I link their SOP. So for example, if there's a team member who's doing this stuff day in, day out, they could do it in their sleep. They really almost want a checklist with the workflow. They don't really need the detail to know exactly what has to happen. They can just go through it and say, this is a little too much. I just want to go through, get done with my process. Well, when that person goes on vacation and the other team member has to step in, that person doesn't do it every day. So then they need to have some sort of support. So the way that I like to structure it is that I put in the bare minimum within the workflow, but then I put a link in, and that connects to the standard operating procedure, which is a more in-depth document. And that's usually in Word. And that's a lot easier for the team to manage, right? These workflows can be a little tedious to be able to build out. And so, some people are able to go in and build them out pretty easily, but then there's others who just say this is really complicated. And then that's a barrier, right? Then it just hurts the team because then you're not having that process. So to be able to jump into a Word document, change out the SOP because the custodian changed that document for the 5th time for the year, for example, or something, being able to change that up, it just makes it a lot easier. So there's all these different little tips and tricks, I guess, that you can do within the system to really make sure that it aligns with how you want to run your business, but make it easy on the team for that adoption. Because again, to the training that those two people I just described have a totally different perspective on certain workflows. So how do you build it in a way that appeases everyone? Because, you want to make it, you don't want to turn one person off from using it. So that's a big part of it. And then, just leveraging other softwares. That's been the latest thing for me because I feel like, your software and a lot of others, now that you guys are coming in, there's a lot less that really needs to be built out within the system.
Yeah.
But it's understanding how do you connect it properly with others. So I'm a resource partner with GReminders and Precise FP as well. So, there's all these different softwares now that are really starting to bolster up their integrations. And it's really exciting to see that. And so I feel like I see a new integration every day, which is awesome. I think a lot of advisors are liking the fact that they can now push data without having to worry about admin or, any sort of manual entry issues going back and forth and communication. So really just trying to figure out how do you then, okay, if we're going to take care of note taking, for example, somewhere else, like, okay, then how do we now navigate that within the CRM? So that's another big part of the strategy too, that I work with firms is what is that whole tech stack? So I'm going to only really focus on the CRM, but how do we make sure we're building out the CRM to complement the rest of your tech stack?
Right. And that's a very interesting space. Obviously, there's firms like Wealthbox who've launched their own note taker just the last couple of months, and they're trying to integrate, backward or forward integrate their functionality in some ways. And then there's the other approach where you have an AI platform kind of integrating with multiple software tools. So it's very exciting times. To your point, I think one of the challenges has been for advisory teams is the fact that data lies in different systems and the systems don't talk to each other, and even the structure of the data is so different, even for the same contact, that it's been very hard to make sense of. And I think now that is starting to change a little bit, and those are exciting times. And actually, on that note, if you had you worked with CRMs for so long, right? If you had a wish list in terms of the CRM of the future, with technology, automation, AI, is there a view on what you think you would like it to look like?
Yeah, I think for me, it's definitely going in that direction of where, I can kind of see where things are going. I think for me, more administrative things are becoming part of the AI platforms and part of those parts of the different softwares. As to my, to your point, like no more, data entry and then pushing information. Back when I first started, I was in the room with a lot of advisors taking physical notes and then having to type them in and stuff. And the amount of time that was used on that, in the fact that, sometimes you would miss something. It's just we're human, right? So the fact that the AI can hear it and synthesize it. It's tough to beat that. And so I think that more and more administrative type of things are going to be taken over by AI, which can only help a lot of, especially smaller firms. I know it'll help all, but for a smaller firm, if it's a solo, if they can leverage their support to do all of the manual type of things that the AI just can't do at this point, like account opening, and there's certain things of the whole process that just have to be manually done. But just leveraging their time for that versus doing a lot of this more, kind of clicking and pushing of information back and forth and decreasing the NIGOs of all the information. And then I think too, I have seen some softwares do this, but I think for me, when I was in the industry and then even today, I always love to be proactive versus reactive. So that's why I push for a lot of these processes. And what I like to do is set up a lot of reminders for like tasks and activities based off of certain things. So I see in the future, again, there's certain softwares that are already starting to do this, but, with the kind of like the predictive insights, like, hey, this person, just had a child and they knew this because of certain data, or they are able to see like if they changed jobs or something like that because it's checking their LinkedIn. Like I just see like data is only going to get more expansive as far as access. And there's pros and cons. It's kind of a scary time at the same time, but I think if you can leverage it properly, it can just really be a game changer because you spend so much time doing this research. When I set up prospecting workflows, it's just there's so much time that goes into researching that person, looking at their LinkedIn, looking at their Facebook, and being able to just pull that up like within a second because it pulls in all that information. It can really just save a lot of time. And then I think just more and more integrations across the different platforms. Like I said, I think just over the last couple of years, I think there's just been this big push to make sure that data can really be transferred amongst software platforms. Just because when I first started, even a couple, back 5 years ago, I didn't really see it all that much. And integration means different things to different software companies. So I appreciate that a lot of them are putting in the time to be able to actually integrate a lot of those different data points. So that way there is more of a central truth. Maybe it's not, maybe it is spread across different softwares, but at the same time, how can you make it all together in some capacity? So that's where, I feel like the CRM, yes, it should be the hub. That's what a lot of people say. But to me, it's only as powerful as your whole tech stack. So if there's any breaks or anything that doesn't connect properly, it's not as powerful as it can be. So I think for me, it's like making that true client command center. So to be able to actually look at that client and see exactly what's happening. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement. I think there's just been this huge push of, cash and money and everything into this industry now. So with softwares, and I think it can only help be able to push different advisors to do that. I think as the next generation comes in, they expect technology to be part of their process. It's not a question; it's a guarantee.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure that then therefore the client base is the same way, right? Like I just think like as millennials and Gen X and all, everyone starts to really peak where they are with their careers, and then they start to retire. Like how do we leverage software? And just with how the industry has changed, there's less and less pensions. And so people are having to manage more. And how do you educate people the best? And I feel like having technology, you're in their pocket, right? Like there's a couple different softwares I've seen where there's just a lot more interaction with the client that used to be just either a phone call or an email. But really these client portals are getting more and more enhanced. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. But I think that the client relationship is only going to get enhanced by leveraging more and more software.
No, I think absolutely right. I think advisors can do better work for their clients. And I think I love the point you made earlier, right? That technology is actually making solo shops, smaller shops more equipped because they today struggle because they don't have the same support teams that the larger firms have. But on the other side, I also think the larger teams can be a lot leaner as well.
Right.
So there's benefits on both sides, and I think I like the fact future CRM should be a client command center. I think that's probably a good way of looking at it. So, but we'll see. We'll know, and the future isn't that far away. The way things are moving these days, every day there's something new, right? So maybe in 6 months' time we'll have a view on what things are looking like. But coming back. To CRM usage, Stephanie, I think we've spoken a little bit about what ails good usage, but what are some of the best examples that you've seen? Are there certain firms who have kind of really impressed you with creative utilization of their CRMs and how they use it to their benefit? Any examples?
Yeah,
you would love.
I'd say one of the creative ones, definitely going back to like the workflows with your SOPs or any other links to information, because a lot of times different documentation changes. So you want to make sure that you connect that, and it could be to like your file storage. So there's all different kinds that you can have, and just having those links ready to go. So that way the team knows exactly where you're storing all that information. And then again, to point as far as the lean tech stack, just making sure that you're leveraging the software and figuring out like how do we leverage different parts of it to be able to do it. So again, with all these integrations, I mean, Precise FP now has integrated with Geo Reminders, and there's they're all starting to integrate with one another. So that's been a huge game changer too, is that it's not like you're just integrating with the CRM. You're integrating with all the other softwares as well. So it's just trying to figure out, okay, how do we leverage the softwares as much as possible? Because I myself, I've dabbled in Zapier, but I'm not an expert by any means. There's other consultants out there that are. So for me, because of that, I personally really like the fact that a lot of these guys have started doing these integrations. So that way I've just built it in a way where it's built in. It's not on the advisor to have to manage their Zapier account. So how do we leverage those different softwares for the automations that are already built in them? So that way it can automatically launch, when you schedule, for example, a meeting, it can automatically now launch a workflow within the CRM. It can automatically launch an activity. So there's all these different ways to leverage automations outside of the CRM, but in other technology that you have access to. So that way you can actually streamline the whole process. I mean, like Jira reminders, they have like a whole automated client review process. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff out there. So that's the key, is figuring out, okay, like what do I actually need? Because you don't want to get bombarded by all these different options of tech, but how can you leverage the information as best you can, and be able to be successful with that, with, not getting too much, but, I like to try and keep around like 5 softwares if possible. I mean, you have to always have your email and your calendaring. But then, if you can have, your note taker, and then you can have, your scheduling, and then, your CRM and custodian, but like, again, you try and get it as lean as possible so that we are not feeling like you're being spread thin. Because to your point, these larger firms that have 35 or so different technologies, sometimes you don't even know what you're paying for them still. And it's just, you're not leveraging them as much as possible. But yeah, I'd say that. And then really just leveraging custom fields and different, Redtail calls them UDFs, but really just trying to figure out, okay, what do I like with that's in the standard aspects of the system? But then if they don't exist, how can we leverage the custom fields? Like Wealthbox, they have custom fields all over the place, whether it's opportunities or at the at the client level. So a lot of times they do like last review date as a custom field within Wealthbox. And then we're able to leverage that to be able to, have reports and then dashboards to be able to see that date and then actually take action. So that's where it's just trying to figure out, okay, how do we build the system in a way that you can be able to leverage it the most? And then lastly, probably one of the really cool features that I do like is the fact that from the email within Wealthbox, for example, you can actually take action directly from there. So you can actually like launch a task template, for example, or an opportunity. So again, it's just trying to figure out like what aspects of the system seem to be really easy to adopt within the team that are really straightforward. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you're leveraging as much as you can. So yeah, really making sure you're using the templates and being smart about how you're using them. Because at the end of the day, you just want to make sure your team is using them and using them properly. Because the day in, day out of using the data just gives you all of those great insights whenever you're trying to track that information. So the reports and the dashboards and everything really rely on you doing all of the day-to-day work within the system. So it does seem tedious, but at the end of the day, it's totally worth it, because whether it's an audit or if you're doing something else, like the fact that you could literally click a button now and be able to see that information can really be a game changer for a lot of firms.
Got it. Okay, so if maybe final kind of CRM question, but in sticking to the theme of 5, if there were 5 must-dos that someone who has a CRM must do, what would they be to run a good?
I'd say the first one is definitely you have to document all of your processes. I think that's where I feel like a lot of people feel like they can just kind of get their way through building out their CRM, and they kind of loosely have a prospecting process, or they're onboarding, they kind of ironed it out, but not really. Those are the ones where we have to spend a lot of time on we get to that point where it actually is all documented, because you can't really leverage the system or the templates unless you have that stuff all documented. So I usually like to, Redtail calls it their whiteboarding process. So I always like to be able to work all of that information out. But where I find the most success is when you actually involve all team members. So you want to make sure that whoever actually is sending out that DocuSign is in that conversation as well, because the advisor usually doesn't know every single step. They're wanting to leverage their team to do a lot of different things. So you want to make sure that every single step gets documented. So that's why it's so critical to have the whole team in those conversations and say, oh, I had no idea that actually happened after this step, or, what have you. So it's nice to, and honestly, it's really great too, because you can totally tell the people, like, because again, I've been in all those different shoes. It's nice to have your voice heard, and like they appreciate the fact that you have identified that this is a step that cannot be missed. So it kind of gets that camaraderie with the team of understanding exactly what, let's say, onboarding looks like, and what softwares are we using, what steps are we doing. So it's kind of a multiple way to be able to approach it. And I just like it because it's, again, you're solving the problem of having a process, but you're also kind of solving an adoption problem too, because then you're able to bring everyone together. And then, yeah, just kind of to your point earlier about like clean data, you want to make sure all that information. So you got to make sure that your contact data is really clean. Make sure your templates are really cleaned up. have whatever detail you need in there. And then just trying to make sure you have all of your database lists. So again, that's like your menu in the back end of the system. Both Wealthbox and Redtail have them. And so just trying to figure out, okay, what do I need that needs to be removed? A lot of times, like I said, I get in there and I see either demo information or stuff from way back when that is no longer relevant. So making sure that those options are all clean. Because again, if teams are starting to, leverage this different contact sources, for example, you don't want to have so many different options that are no longer relevant and then have the mistake of someone saying, well, I think it might be this, and then just guess. It's better to just keep it blank versus making the wrong selection. And then I think the two others, one would be segmenting your clients. So to that point of having your menu, making sure you're identifying if you are segmenting your clients, either whether it's based off of services or AUM, anything like that. Want to make sure that we segment those clients and utilize the standard fields that they have in there, whether it's status, category, contact type, or tags, being able to identify that information. So that way everyone knows exactly who that person is, what the relationship is to the firm. And then lastly, having some sort of a maintenance program or routine. So whether it's an annual basis or quarterly, making sure you're running reports to make sure that there's no missing information, or making sure that you're keeping up with the notes and everything. Because I think that's the issue, is a lot of times we get to maybe like 6 months or a year down the road and something pops up, like whether it's another review or something, and you're like, oh, I still have all my notes. They're still in my note taker, or they're still on paper or something like that. So having kind of that system built in to just kind of do that routine checkup. Again, I use a lot of like kind of going to the doctor and medical examples, like kind of doing like your annual checkup of just making sure you're on pace. So again, that's where that's how I kind of run my consulting businesses. I do that initial checkup, right? Like the first time you go to a doctor, for example, or a specialist, and figure out, okay, what's our baseline? And then the goal is that then you do your annual checkups just to make sure, okay, we've cleaned everything up. We got it all in place. Now let's figure out how do we keep it and maintain it. So that way, if something does change, we're just doing a little bit versus having to do a whole overhaul.
Got it. That's a brilliant checklist, Stephanie. So document your processes, ensure you have clean data, segment clients, and after doing all this, make sure you're routinely maintaining and auditing it, right? So
maintaining and then just training the team on the basics and including them in the process. So yeah, those are the five.
Brilliant. This has been great. I think anyone listening to this is going to learn a lot about making the best use of their CRM. I know we spoke a lot about work in CRMs, but before we end, what keeps you happy outside of work and wealth management? What any hobbies or anything you like to do outside of all this?
So like I mentioned in the beginning, I started this business when we had our first child. Now we have two, so they're 5 and 2, and they keep us quite busy doing lots of things. I've always been an avid skier, so I love the mountains are about 3 hours from here. So we got our 5-year-old on skis already, so she loves it. So it's something that was really important to me growing up with my family. So I'm excited to continue that tradition with them. The 2-year-old's a little too young, probably 1 more year and then we'll throw her on some skis. But love to travel. My dad was a pilot for 35 years. And so I was able to travel lots of different places. I still have a lot of places I still need to check off my list. We did New Zealand for our honeymoon, and I absolutely loved the country. So definitely once the girls get a little older, I got the travel bug again. So would love to start to travel a little bit more.
Not fun with the 2-year-old on a long haul, right? So
a little bit more, but love to travel. Love to just do sports in general. Love to go on runs. Love to be outdoors, go hiking. So just trying to do things that are fun with the family and be outdoors. So those are a couple of different things that
Brilliant.
I do.
That's lovely, Stephanie. And ski season is coming up, so it should be fun in a couple of months. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Lots of learnings there, and thank you again.
Of course, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye bye.